Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello friends, DJ here. This is the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and I want to talk about double masters. You know, Wizards of the Coast said that they weren't going to make any more master sets for a little while, and it turns out master sets are back, and they're back twice as much. Double Masters has 2 rares for every pack, and there is a lot of hype behind this set. It's coming out faster than we think on August 7th, and starting off, I definitely want to dive into this set and find out what it can do for all of you Commander players out there, but there's a little bit of controversy starting off with Double Masters, and I think a lot of it has to do with, well, the pricing. If we click on pre-order now, we can see that a 24 packs, 1 box, is $318. That's crazy. That's so expensive. But this isn't even the thing that people are the most up in arms about. I think that it's this VIP pack down here that's $100 for a pack of Magic cards. Okay, now I think you might be looking for some outrage here, but it's not going to come from me, honestly. The thing is that this isn't the traditional Magic product that I like to buy. I like drafting a lot. In fact, I'm super excited about drafting a set where you have 2 rares. That's like double the opportunity to do like crazy broken stuff in a draft environment. Also, they said that the first pick is going to be 2 cards, like take 2 cards from your first pack. So that can like set you into an archetype. So that's, I mean, I actually kind of like that. But at this price point, who's going to draft this? And this pack can't be drafted. So what is this pack really? It's gambling. It's a loot box. And I've nothing against gambling. If you know that you're gambling, it's super fun to just spend $100 and say, am I going to open 300 or am I going to open 20 bucks worth of value? Gambling can be really fun. It's just, I personally don't like it. So this is not the same as, you know, the collector's editions or some of these other packs out there. I personally would be excited to see a lot of these cards enter into circulation and make Commander cheaper. And that's really the push of this episode we have today. And it's going to be to look at the Double Masters cards and find out how good this is for Commander. Spoiler. It's great. It's so great for our format. So I can't be mad. I can't be mad at this if it's going to make cards cheaper. You know what I mean? And I can't be mad if people want to gamble. That's totally cool too. So both of these are great. Let's talk about making Commander cards cheaper by giving us one of the best green enchantments out there, Doubling Season. Oh, so good. Doubles tokens, doubles counters. This is one of the key things that can double Planeswalker loyalty. And so this is so broken in Planeswalker decks, allowing you to just play a Walker in Ultimate, but it goes in so many other different decks too. We've seen this be a must kill on Commander tables, and that's why it commands such a high price tag. It was reprinted in Battle Bond and is up to $60 now. Already dropped off a little bit, you know, in the 40s, which it's probably not going to go very much lower than that, but I'm really glad that it's seeing a reprint. Blightsteel Colossus, if you love infecting people out or just big dumb enchantments, Blightsteel Colossus is your thing. Atraxa Praetor's Voice, this is a very popular commander. In fact, if we look at sort of the longest data that EDH Rec holds, Atraxa's number 2. We got, you know, close to 5,000 decks. So Atraxa deserves a reprint. And by the way, if you're excited about blinging out your deck, you have a very cool version of Atraxa. So for those of you out there that really want your Atraxa deck to look really cool, man, you got it right there. Some cool bling in your command zone. But, you know, more people need to play with Atraxa, so let's get going. Kali of the Vast is from the original Commander set, Commander 2011, and it's always commanded a pretty high price tag. Even going into this, you know, after Commander Anthology, it was sitting above $30. And Kalia has lost a little bit of its shine, a little bit of its power. It used to be you'd ramp out Kalia, give it haste, and you'd slam in with the biggest demon, dragon, angel that you could. Now it's just kind of like a fun niche deck for sort of like old school players. But if we want to talk about power when it comes to Commander, fast mana. Mana Crypt. Man, this could be more powerful than Sol Ring. And when you have something so powerful, it stinks that it's priced out of so many people's budgets. This was over $100, like $115, and now down to $85. Okay, I know that this isn't going to be like a $50 card because as soon as it reaches a certain threshold, people are going to buy it up and put it in their Commander decks. But I love having a new cool version out there. This art looks great. I mean, it's clearly not Kaladesh invention art. Ooh. We're actually going to have a few cards that like directly compete against the Kaladesh invention art, which is interesting because, you know, you're seeing reprints of really premier products right there. But more Mana Crypts need to be out there because if your play group is playing with fast mana, you kind of need some fast mana of your own to like keep up with them. And so Mana Crypt can be very, very strong. All right, let's get to something that I actively don't like. I don't like reprints of lands in this set. These are all from original art. Oh, they're not going to tell me what the original art. I think it's from Unhinged. No, that's Unstable. Unhinged, something like that. And they just kind of changed the border a little bit. I don't know, it feels lazy. I love basic lands. And now you're reprinting the art of the cool land that I had at one point in time. I mean, same thing with the other lands. They're Noah Bradley, Zendikar lands. They changed the way that they look a little bit. I wonder if they're in this spoiler a little bit later, but I mean, maybe I can find them. Yeah, Double Masters. See, this is one of them. I don't know. I just really prefer the old version, and I wish that they would make something new and cool for this land set rather than recycling old art. Okay, let's get into the actual cards. Many of you don't care about my opinion on lands. Grim Lavamancer is really, really fun in older formats, great in cube, lackluster in our format. 2 damage isn't really enough, especially at the cost of exiling 2 cards, but I've seen it played, so maybe. Let's talk about a card that is really powerful, Champion of Lamhold. This, again, getting under $1 would be really great. You play a bunch of creatures, Champion gets big, and then your team gets unblockable. It's an awesome win condition. Boon Reflection, if you're in the life gain deck, you often have enough life gain. I don't think that you need to double it, but people love gaining life. So if you love it, you know, follow your dreams, do what you love. Thought Reflection, we recently got Teferi's blah, blah, blah from, I should probably look it up for you, shouldn't I? But 7 mana for this effect is so much mana. I honestly think that you can get a lot more for this. And, you know, you got the 4 mana Teferi's thing from Core 21. It doesn't trigger off of the first card, but every other card you draw 2 instead of 1. It's like Alhammar's Archive. Like Alhammar's Archive instead of this thing. Come on. Okay. Reclamation Stage is a staple. You don't need me to tell you that. Expedition Map is so good, and the price of this was a little bit high. It was like $5, and now that it's down to $1, this can go in so many different decks. The problem is that this being cheap doesn't make the things that it searches cheap, like Gaia's Cradle or Cabal Coffers or Strip Mine. But I like having nice art for it, and I like having this effect in there, because if you have the nice lands, you need to get them. Conjurer's Closet, if you have Blink decks, new Thassa deck, Brago deck, Rune deck, Conjurer's Closet can just be a really fun value engine. Speaking of value, Baleful Strix, a lot of people in Dimir just play it because it's like, look, it cycles. It's so easy to just play it and you draw your other card and everything's great. And having Flying and Death Touch means that it really is a relevant body. Like a 1/1, usually not a relevant body, but when it has Death Touch, when it can trade away, protect things like your Planeswalkers here, then it becomes really good. Planeswalkers in general aren't very strong in our format. Jace the Mind Sculptor is this like, oh my gosh, it's this crazy card, but in our format, it's not as good. The reason why is because it's really easily threatened and doesn't really defend itself because it's just a bounce. And then it sets itself on 2 loyalty, which means that any dinky creature out there could just go, okay, I'll kill Jace. Also the plus, even though it's a +2, is only a Fate Seal. It's a slight card advantage for you, like a Scry, but against an opponent, you're only really affecting one opponent. But that Brainstorm can work with a ton of top deck manipulation effects. Hang on, we got to look at the right Karn. Look at that blue Karn going on there. Blue Karn, great looking face. Karn is actually very similar to Jace the Mind Sculptor. You've seen him be amazing in other formats, but in our format, not so much. It's a 7 mana Vindicate. Take out one thing and then usually Karn dies. If you tick Karn up, you're only targeting one opponent. It does tick up by a crazy amount, but what are you working towards? Are you working towards the ultimate that everyone hates? No. Okay. So Karn, sometimes I've seen it used as just like a single removal spell in big mana decks, but I don't think that it's necessary for us. Similarly, since we can only have a single copy of these cards, Urza's Mine, Power Plant, and Tower, even though I love this sort of combination right here, isn't really going off so much. Sometimes if you're playing like a Kozilek deck or just a mono brown deck, you can include these 3 and maybe an expedition map to be able to get them, maybe. But most of the time, they're just not going to do very much. Glimmer Void is too much of a downside in our format. I think that we have a lot of things that produce many colors, and if there's ever a board wipe for artifacts, you lose your land too. No, way too much risk. Blinkmoth Nexus is a relevant man land. I've seen this actually I have this in my Noyandar deck. I love putting counters on it. Sometimes you can activate this and, hook up an equipment to get damage through. So, if you need to use your utility lands sparingly, but you can go worse than Blinkmoth Nexus. Speaking of swords, we got the sword cycle going on here, and look at that art, Sword of War and Peace. Ugh. So this is again in direct competition with this Sword of War and Peace. What are you guys gonna choose? What are you gonna choose if you're blinging out your deck? I don't know. Sword of War and Peace is not one of the more impressive swords because gaining life is in our format, and really this just does a ton of damage. And sometimes that's what you want, is a lot of damage, but in terms of sword ranking, this is near the bottom. Let's talk about Sunforger, because Sunforger had gone up in price. It was nearing $5, and then this reprint suddenly made it a little bit more affordable. People love playing Sunforger and Sunforger packages. You can unequip it to cast an instant straight out of your library. That's Boros Charm, Teferi's Protection, Path to Exile, Swords, just so much good stuff. Combat tricks and interaction and protection. It is clunky though. 3 and 3 to equip. You are paying a cost, but because people love the Sunforger package so much, like, hey, I'm glad it's here. Let's talk about Wormcoil Engine and click on the good art. 6 mana, 6/6 lifelink Death Touch. This thing just smashes in, and you're gonna love this in any artifact deck because you can ramp it out faster with this sort of generic mana that it's got going on here. Also really good to sneak in, to play, to ready back any sort of sacrifice shenanigans because it leaves 2 relevant bodies behind. Okay, let's go back in time to Magus of the Abyss. This is not the Abyss. The Abyss being on an enchantment really does kind of halt the game down a little bit better, but Magus of the Abyss is still an interesting mechanic, and so people will have to look at it and read it for a little bit. But this is truly symmetrical because if you don't have sack fodder like a Bitter Blossom going, then you will have to eventually kill your own Magus, and that's the difference between Magus of the Abyss and the Enchantment Abyss. Sculpting Steel is really fun, but we got some beautiful Sculpting Steel over here that's only $40. Look at that. Look at that beautiful Sculpting Steel. And to be honest, the mirror from Amonkhet, Mirage Mirror. Don't even have to search it. Mirage Mirror, I honestly think it's just better. So I'm low on Sculpting Steel. Although Shroom the Hegemon, Sculpting Steel, that's a combo. That's a combo right here in Double Masters. There's also Spoiler Phyrexian Metamorph up there, which is also a combo. Okay. Shroom used to be a really powerful combo artifact general, and now not so much. This card's like 50 cents. Yeah, look, 50 cents. Yeah, you might play it in your deck. You might have it as sort of an old school callback general, and I love that. But remember, this thing combos, so you got to be aware of it. Engineered Explosives is much more powerful in other formats. Even though we have access to all colors, we want more out of our board wipes. We love Exploration because extra land drops are really good, especially when you can get the card draw to make it work. If you can play off the top with like a Courser or a Verge Rangers or an Oracle Moldiah, and you have extra land drops, then you're getting ramp and card draw at the same time, and those are great. So if you have the card draw to match up with Exploration, it's really good. A lot of decks want 1-mana enchantments as well, want lands on the battlefield. This really earned its price tag, and so I'm super glad it's getting a reprint here. Similarly, Trastodon should be cheap. It should be under $1, but it kept like rising up. This used to be a 25-cent card that I would put in super budget decks, and now it was up above $1. So let's get it back down again. Every green deck deserves a big elephant that makes even more big elephants. I mean, if you're willing to sacrifice your own lands or your own stuff, you're talking about 18 power on the board. That's crazy good. Lux Cannon is super fun in those counters matter deck. You can charge it up and start nuking things down. You can also mess with counters, move counters onto it. It's very slow and dirtily, but a lot of people have fun with it, and so I'm really glad that it's here. Flicker Wisp works much better when you can put it into play at instant speed. I haven't seen a lot of it in our format, but it's an older card, so it definitely has a little bit more play than the modern Blink. I love that it can target your opponent's stuff. It can get blockers out of the way. It can sort of get rid of tokens and stuff like that. So it definitely has some play to it, but it's not Restoration Angel, honestly. Because the flash, I think, makes it better. Flicker Wisp is really good when you can Ether Violet into play, sort of giving it that flash. Blade Splicer is just an awesome value card, and I don't think that 4 power for 3 mana is good enough in our format. Reese the Redeemed used to be pretty expensive, and then it got a couple reprints in Mystery Booster and Double Masters, and now it's a much more manageable price tag. People love this as a general. I think it's pretty fun. I also like it in token decks because if you ever double up your tokens, like doubling is great. Just imagine that doubling season we got going on there too. So good. Okay, Stonehewer Giant. This can be an engine. I've just never really enjoyed it. Never really got it going because it's 5 mana investment and then you have to do 2 and tap. Once you get that 2 and tap, man, you can go searching for the big Argentum armor, the biggest colossal hammers and hammers of Nizan and all this crazy stuff and cheat it into play, but you gotta get that tap going on. And so I've found that Stonehewer Giant is a little bit lower power level than some of the other equipment synergy cards out there. But if no one answers this, like it could be sort of like really broken. Sneak Attack. I really like this new art of Sneak Attack because normally Sneak Attack, like the OG art, is down here and it's all these like goblin things sneaking up on a dragon. That is a Sneak Attack, don't get me wrong, but do you know what Sneak Attack is used for? It's used to cheat in a big old dragon thing to take out everything on the opponent's side. So I like the idea of sort of this big thing sneaking up on all these little guys instead. I really dislike that, again, they're using Judge promo art so that now it's not as special. Just the difference between Judge promo and this Dual Masters and this Eternal Masters is a little shooting star. Woo, Judge's shooting star. I think that they deserve like cool, unique art. Anyway, now the cool, unique art is from this box topper. Austere Command. You know, board wipes are key. Selective board wipes can really make a board wipe not symmetrical. If you have some key creatures out there, you can wipe away exactly what you need to with Austere Command and leave some certain things behind. One thing that stinks though is that in white, a lot of times you are very reliant on your artifacts. And so this kind of only has 2 modes. And so you kind of have to wonder what deck is Austere Command going in when you're playing it. But overall, great card. Sphinx the Summoner, not very high power level. Voice of Resurgence, man, Dragon's Maze was a bad set. That's all I have to say about that. Not seeing very much playing Commander. Noble Hierarch would be a good mana dork, but it's set to Bant. And so when you're thinking about it like, oh, it's in Bant and it's $60, like then people just don't play Noble Hierarch as a dork. But if it gets cheap and there's a lot of Bant decks out there, then there we go. Kragwick Cremator basically does damage at random, and usually Commander players don't like their removal spells or their 5/4s to randomly hose their own hand. Trash for Treasure is great. You're playing a Duretti deck, you're playing Wormcoil Engines in your graveyard or Myr Battlespheres or whatever. Just switch them around and then suddenly get tons of value. I'm a big fan of Trash for Treasure. Bosch Iron Golem is a fun commander, although not as popular as he used to be. But the idea of just chucking things, like, a Spine of Ishsaw, just chucking it for 7 damage and then getting it back into your hand to blow something else up again is so good. And then also with Bosch, you can sacrifice itself, which is really cool, to just do 8. That's so much damage. Let's take a breather to look at Cyclonic Rift. Listen, I don't have to tell you how good Cyclonic Rift is. Whether you love it or hate it, it's an inevitability. It's here to stay. And so Cyclonic Rift, get it now that it's cheap, hopefully, and rift your opponents out or make the game last way longer than it should. Arkham Dagsum needed a reprint. It did not need to be this expensive, hasn't been reprinted since Cold Snap, and it's a fun commander because you basically switch control, you switch in and out creatures and non-creature artifacts, and so you need to sort of balance your deck, but there's a lot of play to, you can combo with Arkham Dagsum, don't get me wrong, but there could be a lot of value Arkham play, and I think that people are going to open up this card and be a little bit disappointed, but then realize that it's a really, really cool commander. Heat Shimmer doesn't really care. I don't care about Heat Shimmer except for comboing with Dualcaster Mage. Look at this beautiful Noble Hierarch. Brea! Brea is also over here in the EDH top commanders, down toward the bottom, but look at that. Brea's still got her spot going on. And Brea is very powerful. I love that people are going to be able to play Brea and build decks around her even now. Thirst value draw card. It's going to be pretty cheap. Whoa! Okay, good. 40 cents. Why is this 168? That's ridiculous. This should be just like a 40-cent card. Really good in artifact decks for binning stuff that you might actually want in the graveyard. Think Trash for Treasure. Okay, let's talk about Path to Exile. This is prime removal. This has always been like $4. Let's get the price of this down. I want people to play Path to Exile in every single white deck. And also reprinted in Jumpstart. Really great. If you want some art though, woohoo, look at this Magic Fest art. For all of you going to Magic Fests in 2020, look at this Path to Exile. Channel Fireball is selling Magic Fest packs sort of thing. And so if that's your thing, you can get your own Path to Exile. Not $9 isn't that much, but really, if we're talking about the best art of Path to Exile, let's talk about Rebecca Gaze. Woo, look at this art. Oh my gosh, I love it. That might be my favorite Magic art. I have to remember that art so I can say that, promo Path to Exile is my favorite art. Let's talk about Skittles. Good old Skittles the Blight Dragon, nearing in on $50. Never a reprint, now down to about $25. Thumbs up. I personally like Infect. I think it's a great little mechanic, and I'm not put off by the fact that you have to have only 10 poison counters to die in Commander. We can fight later, you and me, we can argue at another time. A lot of times if you have a Mimeoplasm deck, you might want Skittles in there, make Mimeoplasm a copy of Skittles, put some +1/+1 counters on it, give it haste, and suddenly you're infecting people out, and it's regenerating and evasive, pretty good. Skittles goes in a lot of other Infect decks as well, pretty solid. I've seen it in Dragon decks too. No, Scion of the Ur Dragon, where you can kind of turn your Scion into a Skittles and just punch in for infect damage too. That's really good. Doom Necromancer is a really awkward reanimation effect. We have literal reanimate, animate dead necromancy, so pass. Dark Confidant. Dark Confidant was a staple of Modern when we were playing Jund and, you're playing Fair Magic. When Modern wasn't all messed up. But honestly, I think that we could play more Dark Confidant in Commander. People don't like losing 5 or 6 life in a single go, but if you look at the average CMC of your deck, and you're thinking, well, odds are I'm only going to be losing 2 or 3 a turn, Dark Confidant could be worth it. And if you have a deck that could actually use the body, I have it in my Sig River Cutthroat deck, and Dark Confidant is really good because I use the body. Timna the Weaver could be good as well. I'm not saying that this is a staple of our format, but I think that it could be used a little bit more often. Now, let's talk about the Dark Depths combo. Okay, these 3 cards sort of combo together. Vampire Hexmage can remove all these ice counters from Dark Depths to create Merit Lage, a 2020 flying indestructible avatar. And Thespian Stage can turn into a copy of Dark Depths, and when you just turn into a copy, you're not getting all these snow counters, and so can then turn into this Merit Lage. So we have 2 cards that combo with Dark Depths, creating a very fast 2020. In limited, not in limited. I mean, if limited, you're awesome. But if you are doing this in constructed format, you can race to Dark Depths a lot more reliably, or in lands, grind someone out and get to Dark Depths. I have the Dark Depths combo in my lands deck, but you really need some reliability because Dark Depths does not tap for mana. So that's a big downside with this card. I mean, Thespian Stage, at least it taps for mana. You can transform it into your opponent's Gaia's Cradle or something like that. But Dark Depths is a big hit to your mana base, and so you want to be able to have some reliability when it comes to this card. All right. Here are these other lands, and I don't like how they're reusing the art. I mean, I also don't like that it's Noah Bradley art, although Wizards of the Coast have been very upfront with saying that they've cut ties with Noah Bradley over some of the disgraceful things that he's done within the Magic community. You can look up somewhere else statements about that. But of course, I just I'm gonna breeze right past these cards because I don't care. To Crop Rotation. This is the reliability we need in Dark Depths Thespian Stage. But Crop Rotation, man, original card, you know, not that expensive, but let's look at the foil. The foil was over $128. Look at that. That's crazy. And this was just a common, and this art is not that good. So now that we have an awesome version to like really bling out our decks, like that is something I'm very, very excited about. Crop Rotation. Just think about all the powerful lands we have, all the logic I use for Expedition Map. Crop Rotation answers those. Council's Judgment. So this is an awesome removal spell because it gets around things like Shroud and Hexproof. It even gets True Name Nemesis, or, you know, and we don't worry about Big Emrakul, but it can get Big Emrakul in older formats. See, because you're voting for something, you're not actually targeting it, you're voting for it. It's like different wording. And so you can actually get rid of threats that are really, really difficult to answer. And if you do have a really difficult threat, then, you know, odds are the table will agree and get rid of it. Sometimes if you can really pull your politics, Council's Judgment can get rid of 2 of your opponent's things, and that's just great value. Also, awesome to see a cool reprint, cool art for a reprint. Okay, Wrath of God, solid board wipe, but we also got new art Wrath of God. This is the game day promo, like for pre-release. So I guess if you can go to a pre-release, you'll get this. I don't know who's doing pre-releases right now. I mean, I don't think I know for a fact I'm not going to a pre-release in August 7th. It's too soon. So I don't know how this card's getting out there, but I like the art, and Wrath of God needs to be cheaper. Vengevine is a solid card in other formats, but a 4/3 haste is not powerful enough no matter how quickly you get it onto the battlefield. Meddling Mage is really cool because you can name opponents' commanders. Also, you can gain information with cards like Telepathy to sort of hose an opponent's specific card. But again, a lot of people really dislike this, and sometimes they have ways to get around it. And so I think that Meddling Mage is going to see more play in more competitive areas where you need the body as well, and where the mana cost is really easy on them. Treasure Mage, get those big artifacts that you need. I mean, we have lots of Trinket Mage, Trophy Mage, Treasure Mage, so if you need something in your artifact deck, you got the tutor for it. Sundering Titan is banned in Commander. Look at that little banned thing right there. I think it would be too good. It would punish too many decks and let other decks sort of take over. Trinisphere. We're sort of a big mana format, and so Trinisphere making everything cost 3. For many decks, it's like, psh, I don't care, nothing. But if you're in Vintage and you're used to playing Moxen, then this could slow everything down like crazy. I have seen some competitive metas where Trinisphere can do a lot of work. Academy Ruins, again, this is this artifacts theme that we've seen throughout this whole set. Get your artifact back, and look at this beautiful art. Tolarian Academy sitting there underwater, being a great place for the fishies and the merfolks, but really getting these powerful artifacts that are in your graveyard back into your hand. All right, let's talk about the filter lands. I have never been a fan of these because they've been way too expensive for what you get. I mean, we look at a $30 card and it just filters into 2 different colors. It's just not good enough for the price. And I really, really hope that this will bring the price tag down like a lot. If this was like a $3 land, maybe a $5 land, I think that it would be great and you'd slot it into a lot of different decks, but I would rather have a lot of different things over these lands. The one exception though, is if you have mana doublers. So if like something mana reflection sort of doubles the output of everything, then you can put 1 mana in and get 4 mana out of this Wooded Bastion. That gives my thumbs up for sure. Okay, we got Rolling Earthquake. This is actually my one big pickup for you guys because this was a Portal 3 Kingdoms deck. Then it was from the Vault Annihilation, still not cheap. You know, you don't want to pay $12, $13 for an Earthquake effect. Now, if this thing gets down to like $2, because look at where it's legal. Are people playing this in Legacy and Vintage? No, this is only Commander. So if this starts getting super cheap and everyone hates Rolling Earthquake, buy them, because this is going to be good for you in so many different decks. Earthquake only hits ground creatures and players, but people still play it in like Firesong and Sunspeakers and these like Gisela decks. Gisela? Whatever. Decks where it doubles damage to you but halves damage to yourself, or just wanting to deal damage all over the place. And Rolling Earthquake can hit everything, even things in the sky. You're gonna randomly get hosed by that one card with Horsemanship. No, you're not. So I'm really glad that Rolling Earthquake's gonna enter into a lot more people's collections. Similarly with Blasphemous Act, it's a board wipe that should be cheap, but is sitting at like $7 or $8, like $7, despite a couple reprints. Yeah, let's get this cheap again. Love Blasphemous Act. We need these solid board wipes for red. Court of Calling, I didn't read up to find out why there's 2 different versions, but there are. Cool. This works best in token decks. The green is a lot to pay to start tutoring things up. I've seen a lot more people turn towards Finale of Devastation or Green Sun Zenith rather than Court of Calling, even though the instant speed and the ability to get any color creature over Green Sun Zenith gives it a little bit more flexibility. Okay, let's talk about Thraben Inspector. Much better than you think. Gives you a little clue, gives you a body, pretty good. Uncommon, removal spell, fine. Beacon of Unrest. This is awkward reanimate effects. We have much better reanimate effects. Pirate Spellbomb only really works with Auric Salvagers. I don't know why I'm going to explain Auric Salvagers, but I am, because this is Bomberman combo. So Auric Salvagers says 1 and a white, you can return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand, but it has to have a CMC 1 or less. So if you combine this with Lion's Eye Diamond, oh my gosh, how many lions do we have here? And not their diamonds. There we go. Lion's Eye Diamond, discard your hand. This is a Black Lotus. Then you can basically discard your hand and then keep getting it back again for 2 mana, generate 3, get it back for 2, generate 3, get it back for 2. You get infinite mana, and then, well, you have nothing in your hand, but you have infinite mana. In many cases, you have your commander. So if you even have Brea, you can cast Brea infinite times and activate her with her Thopters infinite times. Or you can even cast something else with low CMC from your graveyard. You can cast Pirate Spellbomb and activate it to deal 2 damage over and over and over again. So Bomberman combo right next to each other. And just value for Auric Salvagers. Mishra's Bauble. This was expensive because Modern was just playing it to get an artifact in the graveyard. And it used to be actually like really up there, but then it was like reprinted. And now I hope it gets pretty cheap because there are decks that want it. You know, I love sometimes having an artifact go out and triggering SRAM or Thopter, Servo, whatever. I like it with Glissa decks so that you can just keep getting it back and drawing more and more cards. Mox Opal. Listen, we already talked about this with Mana Crypt. Fast mana is powerful. This is now banned in Modern, so this is not going to have the crazy insane price tag that we once thought. But if you're playing an artifact deck, this is a Mox. Moxes are crazy, crazy good. So yeah, this could be your way to have really explosive turns and sort of play a higher tier of Magic if you're interested. And if you have the right deck. Ensnaring Bridge, man, this slows games down so much. It's just like, if you're empty-handed, it's just like this crazy moat where no one can attack. It's miserable. But people like being miserable and like staxing out your opponent, so good job if you like that. Goldotha Forge Master is a artifact tutor, and there's some powerful artifacts in the game. You know, get your Worm Coil Engine out there. I don't know why you're paying 5 mana, waiting a turn for it to be activated and sacrificing 3 artifacts for a 6 CMC creature. But there are some artifacts that can just win the game. Think like Aetherflux Reservoir or something like that. So there could be some play to Goldotha Forge Master. Duplicant used to be like the removal spell. I remember that this was like an auto include. It's like, oh, Solemn and Duplicant, they go in every single deck. Not so much the case these days. Duplicant 6 mana, exile something. You know, still like it in some of my green decks, but I just think this is too slow and we have a lot better removal spells. So we mentioned swords. Let's talk about the sword. Sword of Fire and Ice. Oh, see, listen, if you're playing with equipment, odds are you're playing with like red or white in some way. Sometimes black, but mostly those 2 colors. And those 2 colors, they have a hard time drawing cards. And Sword of Fire and Ice draws you cards. It's such a good effect on hitting something. And so Sword of Fire and Ice is probably top tier swords. Sword of Feast and Famine is up there too, being able to untap all of your lands. Really great. Sword of Light and Shadow, getting a creature back. I think that's really solid. Then we have, oh my gosh, there's even more swords. I forgot about like Truth and Justice and all this stuff. Listen, I'm going to do top 10 equipment in a video later on. So tell me if you think that's a good idea. Godo Bandit Warlord. Listen, we got again, like equipment tutor in red, but Godo Bandit Warlord also goes infinite with Helm of the Host. And so this could be a fun equipment tutor, just like beat people down, get the equipment that you want on the battlefield, or you can just win the game. So I like that. I like the ability to sort of pivot. By the way, I've seen Godo be at the helm of pretty competitive decks where you just kind of tax them out and Blood Moon them out and then just sort of win with Godo combo. So it could be a good commander in its own right. Hammer of Nazan, I did not realize this got up to like a $30 card. What? And it's all because of commander. Listen, equip costs stink and Hammer of Nazan gets around that. It's crazy difficult to get it on the battlefield. 8 mana to get it onto a creature. But it basically pumps up every other equipment, instantly attaching them. Remember I talked about that Argentum armor or that Colossal Hammer. You know, Hammer of Nazan, just like once you get it onto the battlefield, really makes your equipment deck sort of work much better together. Speaking of like these equipment packages, we have Masterwork of Ingenuity, really underplayed, I think, because there's a lot of good equipment out there. And one thing I like more than 1 Sword of Fire and Ice is 2 Swords of Fires and Ices. Thragtusk is a value beast. Fine, gain 5 life is fine, recursion is fine. Tell you what, I'd rather sacrifice Thragtusk to Greater Good. Disenchantment is insane. So you can sacrifice a creature to draw cards equals power, then discard 3 cards. This can just be value. You sacrifice something big that was going to die anyways, and then suddenly you're getting deeper and deeper into your deck. I've seen this in Xenagos decks. Greater Good also goes infinite with Ominous Seas. You can basically sacrifice one of these Krakens to draw 8 cards, discard 3, and then, oh wait, you've drawn 8 cards. You get 8 more counters on here, make a Kraken for you to sacrifice to Greater Good again. Basically, you can sculpt your hand however you want, draw your entire deck, win literally however you want. So Greater Good looking like a pretty good card. Kemba is honestly underplayed. Just think about this, a 3-mana 2/4 that just starts making cats. I mean, how many cats do you have to make for this to be a really, really good card? Like 2, 3? And if you just have a few equipment on this, it can pump out tons and tons of cats over the course of a game. And we're talking about a 30-cent card. So really, I think that Kemba is an underplayed card. Even though it might not be the best general, I think it could go into a lot of different equipment decks. Geist is saying Traft, tiny leaders. I couldn't even finish that sentence. Listen. Geist is easily blocked. I've seen commander decks that actually leverage Geist really well. Just tempo decks just keep smashing in for 6 super quickly, but he's kind of outclassed. And honestly, it's a mythic that we really didn't need. This is actually the sort of bum mythic of the set. Every other mythic seems really good, but we got it in Blessed versus Cursed. This is a $2 card that we're getting at mythic. But I guess if we only have one bad mythic, we're fine. And this needs to be at mythic, because just imagine if you're opening up 2 rares a pack and Geist is at rare, because this is miserable to play against in limited. Mirror Battlesphere, big dumb artifact, makes a lot of mirrors, actually has my seal of approval. Good job, Mirror Battlesphere. Master Transmuter, this also cheats artifacts into play. You get to return an artifact to hand and put one onto the battlefield. Again, this is the same problem with like Stonehewer Giant or a lot of these other ones, where it's just got so much upfront cost and you can't immediately activate it. 4 mana, gotta wait a whole turn cycle and then 1 mana activated. That's why Sneak Attack is so good. Hit the battlefield, immediately 1 red to activate it to get that big thing onto the battlefield. Phyrexian Metamorph, just really a solid clone, being able to come down early at 3 mana, sort of leverage your mana by using life as well. And it can copy an artifact, so yeah, doing great. Reshape, hey, you want to cheat some artifacts into play? Straight out of your library? Do it with Reshape, combo people out. Master of Ethereum, if you're running in a sort of an artifact go wide deck, that Psy Master Thopterist, or even Brea herself, if you're just going to go wide with Thopters or Servos, pump them all up, make Master of Ethereum big. It's a great cost, 3 CMC for an Anthem. Walking Ballista is an amazing reprint. This is at the heart of a lot of combos, because if you just get infinite mana, you win the game. Okay. The newest Heliod can combo with Walking Ballista, but honestly, Walking Ballista is just great. Tutor it up with a lot of different cards like Trinket Mage or Ranger of Eos. It's just actually like really solid in a lot of different ways, because, you know, it's got 0 CMC, like 0 power and toughness, just great ways to get it onto the battlefield. Basilisk Collar, you know, this can go really well on any sort of pinging deck. So if you're going to be goblin sharpshooting people or even prodigal sorcering people, equip it up with Basilisk Collar and really make it a threat. But I think that actually Basilisk Collar is just really good in a lot of other decks. I mean, I've seen Shadow Spear do a lot of work, and Basilisk Collar can go in sort of green decks where you have big dumb monsters with trample. Give it Death Touch, and they just trample over even better. So Basilisk Collar is really solid, and the price tag needs to go down. You know, reprinted in the Mystery Booster, which is really good, and then now getting down a little bit lower. Grand Architect goes infinite with Pilipala. A fun little ultimate mana combo, but Grand Architect is value too. Just be able to pump up all your blue creatures, turn artifacts blue, which is really fun. But really, people use it for the shenanigans, man. This is also just like a mana dork, a 2-mana mana dork for artifacts. Like, this just does a little bit of everything. I love leveraging Grand Architect in a bunch of decks. All right, let's talk about one of the most iconic counter spells in the game, Force of Will. Free counterspell. So good. Now, I mentioned free in mana. You have to get rid of a card, and that is a real cost. But my opinion of Force of Will is the more powerful your deck is, and the more powerful decks you're playing against, the better Force of Will is. If you're playing a precon and you don't have a lot of card advantage to sort of minimize the cost of throwing away a card, and if you don't have that game-winning thing that you need to counter, Force of Will isn't as good. but Force of Will is, well, game saving if you can counter someone's big play to win the game. Like, then it's the best card in your deck because it kept you from losing. Or if you could go off and it can protect your combo, then Force of Will is the best card in the world. So it really is much more situational than people say, and it doesn't automatically belong in all of your decks. So just think about that. I mean, and if this card is still like $100, don't feel bad that you don't have it. I don't think you need it. Well of Ideas is really fun because it tricks people into thinking it's symmetrical card draw like a Howling Mine, but it's not, because you get to draw 2 cards and they draw 1. But it's so much mana to get started. 6 mana to start drawing a bunch of cards every turn. I kind of want my effects to be a lot lower to the ground. Actually, I would prefer 5 mana and play Future Sight. Now, my love, my soul, Braids, Conjure Adapt, my favorite commander deck, and now Braids is getting a reprint all the way back from Planar Chaos. People are going to learn Braids. They're going to learn how amazing she is and how fun it is. And you know what? It looks bad. You play Braids and suddenly your opponent gets to put something into play. You're thinking, oh, wait a second, how could this be good? But you have to realize that symmetrical effects, when you build your deck around it, don't end up being symmetrical at all. They're super duper broken. And so if you can guarantee that Braids stays on the battlefield a long time and you've built your deck around Braids, you're going to win those games of Magic. Just great fun card. All right, thanks for sticking with me. We're on the final sort of string of cards. Let's talk about Cranial Plating. If you have an artifact deck and it's got black in it, Cranial Plating is just amazing. It's one of the best pieces of equipment in my Mardu Artifacts deck. By the way, this black, that means that you can instantly attach it. It's not equipping it at sorcery speed. It's just like black, attach. So that means that you can just attack in with a bunch of servos and then suddenly just go, oh, black. I'm going to attach it to the unblocked one. Could kill you. Oh, so great. Disciple of the Vault. I actually like Marionette Master a lot better when you're talking about draining people out. But, you know, some people are going to like that. Joyra is really fun. It was in Dominaria, but it wasn't very expensive in Dominaria, and Dominaria wasn't that long ago. So if you like Joyra, hey, she's out there again. Heartbeat of Spring, it's a Mana Flare, and Mana Flare is actually expensive. Let's look at Mana Flare. Oh no, it's not. White bordered, 450. I lied. This is fine. Play it in your group hug deck. Let's talk about Chrome Mox. Fast mana is very powerful, and the prices of fast mana was going up and up and up. In fact, some people were talking about how very powerful commander players and CDH players were buying up a lot of this powerful fast mana because they knew that their format was growing and our format is growing. Again, you got to wonder, who did it better? Who did it better? Chrome Mox and fast mana, again, throwing away a card is a real cost, but if you need velocity more than card advantage, Chrome Mox is crazy good. Manamorphose, this is basically just a cantrip, free cantrip. So I don't know. I played it in my Riku deck. I played it in the deck with Thousand Year Storm, and it was really good. Otherwise, yeah, whatever. This is Dread Return, and really it's this sort of flashback. If you mill your entire deck with like a Hermit Druid or some way to get your entire deck into your graveyard, then Dread Return can sort of be cast out of your graveyard. So this is a very, very cool effect. Brutaclad was printed pretty recently in the Saheeli Is It Artifacts deck, and so it's fun to see Brutaclad back. Land Tax, oh my gosh, this card is so good. Again, annoyed that the beautiful sort of art that was done on the Judge promo gets reprinted in Battle Bond and in Duel Masters, but this is a $40 card, and this is card advantage in white because it's drawing you lands, but lands are cards. So this is some real card advantage, and, you know, white can have you draw stuff. Okay. Aethersworn Canonist. Really, if you're in an artifact deck, this taxation effect could be good. If you're not in an artifact deck, you don't want it to hamper yourself as well. I mean, I don't know. White's pretty slow and dirtily, so maybe it'll hurt other people more than you. Salvage Titan is pretty mediocre. I mean, we don't really want 6/4 bodies. Treasure Keeper, I used to think that this value was really good, and it was pretty fun to sort of just sort of on death cascade into something else, but too often I was hitting fast mana or mana rocks and stuff like that. Pentad Prism, again, sometimes some of these 5-color Brea decks can use the Sunburst and use the artifact as well. Darksteel Citadel, more artifact shenanigans. Throne of Geth, Populate is an incredibly power effect, but we've seen a lot of Populate. We've seen Flux Channeler and tons of different Populate cards. And so now that we have more, not Populate, Proliferate. We've seen a lot of good Proliferate cards out there, and so we might not need to push towards Throne of Geth as much. Endless Atlas was a Commander 2018 card and honestly didn't see enough play. Play this in your mono red or mono white decks. Adaptive Automaton. The price of this went up a little bit, and then it came out in Explorers of Ixalan. If you're playing a tribal deck, this can just slot in. And hey, look, it's an Anthem for your tribal deck. Cool. So some of those less used tribes, Spell Shapers out there, Adaptive Automaton. Spellskite, protect your combo. Phyrexian Revoker, revoke your opponent's stuff. I love this in low to the ground decks. I have this in my Mardu Artifacts deck. I love being able to disrupt certain mana rocks and other, planeswalkers and other stuff. I think that it's a pretty disruptive card. Shamanic Revelation is really, really cheap. This used to be a super budget card. Yeah, this is going to get down super low. But if you have a lot of creatures on the battlefield, it can draw you 4 or 5 cards. It's pretty nice. And then Ion Storm is just moves charge counters around to deal damage. Not that impressive. And what is impressive is that I got through all of Double Masters. Just kidding. There's way more cards left. If you look over here at all the missing cards, there's a bunch of cards that haven't been filled in yet, and so we have a lot more to go before Double Masters is done, but I am done for today. Tell me in the comments down below, do you like Double Masters? Are you gonna buy a box? Are you gonna buy a VIP box? I am super excited to hear what's going on with this set. And I'm telling you what, we've got some great Commander cards. So even if you don't buy a single card from this set, like you don't buy a single pack or VIP pack or anything like that, like down the line, if you need a Kaalia, it's going to be cheaper. Down the line, if you need a Wormcoil Engine, it's going to be cheaper. And so that's the great part about this set. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I want to thank Cool Stuff Inc. They're the sponsor of the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel. Buy Double Masters from them. If you use the coupon code JUMBO5, you'll get 5% off your order. And I want to thank my patrons. They support me every single day. Thank you, patrons. Thank you for sticking with me with this super long video. Man, that is a week of spoilers, and there's so much to talk about. All right, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.